Hello, Jacalyn Gallegos here. Continuing our series on how to improve the realtor-lender relationship, we have an update for you. My experience with the business has been in the processing department and then the closing department, and then managing of both those departments as operations manager for a few years. And so it comes without saying that I come with a wealth of knowledge when it comes to some of the things that come up in a transaction that if we just address them a little bit ahead of time, that they can make them a little bit easier. Having seen over 1,800 transactions, I've seen these things come up on more than one occasion, and so I just wanted to bring them to everybody's attention. Today's topic is changing or adding seller concessions after we're under initial contract. So we know that that can happen from time to time, and we love it when it does because it always saves our buyer some money. But what we don't love is finding out about it the day before closing, and that happens more often than it doesn't, unfortunately. So what we're seeing in the market right now is that seller concessions are just not that common anymore. So what your lenders are probably doing, and what we definitely are doing, is accounting for some of the seller concessions and making them lender credits instead, and paying for those through the interest rate. So when you add some of those concessions paid by the seller, that may result in us needing to leave some money on the table because there's not enough fees to be paid for with the credit. And as you know, none of the concessions can go towards buyer's down payment, and they all have a minimum required investment into the transaction. So best option is, as soon as you think that there might be concessions in the transaction, call your lender. Say, hey, we're going to get $2,000 in concessions. Is this going to be an issue? Do we need to restructure anything? A lot of times, if you're getting a really big concession or more than what we need, we have the option of dropping your buyer's interest rate, which improves everybody's outcome on the transaction. Almost always, you're going to have to re-underwrite the file if it's fully approved, and the last thing that you want to do is find that out the morning of closing on the last day of the month on a Friday. So the sooner into the transaction that you can have those conversations, obviously, always the better. We are required by law to disclose certain pieces of documentation when those things change a certain amount of times ahead of the transaction closing. So if it's just the good faith estimate that's affected, as long as the buyer receives it the day before closing, we're good. On the till, however, if that number changes, we are required to disclose that document to them, and they are required to have it for at least 3 days prior to closing. So if we find out about one of these changes and it's 2 days prior to closing, we're moving your closing date, and there's really just, unfortunately, not a whole lot we can do about it. And that may mean the matter of closing on the 31st and then closing on the 1st instead. So we definitely want to avoid that. We want those numbers in the same month that we were projecting them to close just as much as you do. And we definitely don't want your buyer to be homeless if for some reason we have to move the closing date out. So help us out and send us that information right away. Your lender will always, always, always help work through any concessions that we're adding, as long as we find out about them early in the transaction rather than a couple days before the transaction's scheduled to close. So if you have any questions or comments about any of the information in today's video, please feel free to leave me a message. If there's any topics you'd like to have us cover or any other questions about this type of transaction I can assist you with, please do not hesitate. My contact information is below, and I look forward to working with you soon. Have a great day.